What's up, everybody? Welcome to ALLSMITH. Today's guest is a father, a big wave surfer, an ocean paddler, and a 10 times Molokai winner. He's an Australian-born waterman and the host of Late Drop, none other than Jamie Mitchell. What's up, man? Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Bryce. Yeah, man. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Dude, I'm excited to unpack your story a little bit and share it with our listeners. But before we dive in, you just had an incredible experience in Costa Rica where you broke your foot, man. What was that like, and how did that take place?
Yeah, I've been having a rough trot with injuries this last year. It's just been one of those years, and I'm not getting any younger. It seems like things are happening more and taking longer to fix. But yeah, I was down in Costa Rica. I was doing a lot of foil boarding, working on I want to start spending some more time. Actually, me and the family, one of our goals is to get some property down there and create a space down there for it to host camps and stuff like that. And so we're in the process of trying to get some land down in Costa Rica. And then so I was down there with a friend, sort of like looking around again, doing some surfing, some foiling, end up doing a stand-up paddleboard camp while I was there, like a little one-day, half-day camp down there, and also a surf survival breath hold clinic with some guys down there as well. So it was fun, action-packed, and along the way, someone bailed their board in a surf session, took out my foot and fractured my foot, so I'm sort of limping around like a 47-year-old man that I am.
There's a lot to lean into based on what you just said, and you've got this background in paddling. When did that start? Like, how did you find that paddling was something that lit your heart on fire and something that you wanted to lean into and put a lot of time and energy towards?
Yeah, just like my daughter has started junior lifeguards this week here on the North Shore, I started a thing called Nippers in Australia, and it's in Australia we have this giant life-saving racing community. It's like surf life-saving, and you can start when you're 5 years old, and it's called the Nippers, and my parents put me in that when I was 5. And so that's when it started, man. It's like all these, you learn how to swim in the surf, how to understand the ocean, rip currents, you learn how to do CPR and all that stuff, like at a really young age going up. And then you're in a club, then you race every Sunday through the summer within your club, and then you race other clubs throughout your town, and then it keeps going up until you're racing the whole country, And so I started that when I was young, and all I can remember at a young age is just all I wanted to do was compete. Like I was doing that, and that at my school I would be in the swimming carnivals. I played football, like anything I could do to get out of school and compete at anything. I just was gravitated towards it, and that was one of the things, and it took over my life really. From 5 years old to my early 20s, I was in that surf life saving movement, swimming, paddling a paddleboard, paddling a surf ski, doing Ironman races, and that morphed into the Molokai race into my early 20s. So that's how it all sort of
started. That makes sense. That's really cool, man. And the thing that always perks my eyebrows a little bit around the surf community, and all the studs that I've been fortunate to cross paths with, like Laird Hamilton, Jojo Roper, Shane Dorian, yourself, is that like my background was basketball, in the sense that like the dimensions of the court stay the same, the size of the hoop stays the same. Inevitably, like the variables are a little bit more controlled. But when you look at management of a wave or wind conditions or environmental factors, inevitably there's significantly more variables when you're trying to do something cool on a board, whether that's paddling, surfing, or foiling. But the surface below you is not the same every time. It inevitably changes. And it sounds to me that at an early age, you developed this connection and the ability to read the water and how to maneuver your balance components in order to perform at a high level. And none of those things are easy. They take a lot of time, a lot of reps, and a lot of like deep focus which I think is so beautiful because it takes the focus away sometimes from the stresses of life.
It's incredible. I get this. I keep having these full circle moments because I'm at an age where my kids are doing exactly what my parents did for me, and like I've been down watching my daughter. Like this morning, my daughter wants to know how she can. They do it's junior lifeguards every morning. They do a run, swim, run, and they do it in their age groups. And my daughter's 9, so the boys and the girls, they get on the line. They do this run, they do a swim, and they do it finish off with a run before they get into the rest of the day. So my daughter is coming second to a boy. So she's beating all her girls, and this young boy is just in front of her. And so this morning before breakfast, we're strategizing on how to beat this boy this morning. And I'm going through exactly the stuff that I was going through, like when I was that age, right? I'm like, hey, darling, you got to get in your own water. You got to get on the inside of him and get to the buoy first. And then when you get around the buoy, he's going to be in your wake and he's going to get all freaked out and you're going to get to the beach before him. Like, I mean, and we just had this conversation literally 25 minutes ago and she's 8 years old. And I'm like loving it. And she's asking me, you know, she's like, Dad, I want to try and beat him. I'm like, well, okay, this is what I think you can do. You know, like, so let's try that this morning. If you don't do it today, we'll try again tomorrow. Yeah. And it did, man. The Nippers program in Australia gave me everything. Like I learned everything I know now started when I was 5 and 6. And from this, I remember this old guy in the surf club was like, Jamie, when you dive under the water and you're trying to swim out through the surf, you grab onto the sand.
Yeah,
you grab onto the sand, you open your eyes, and then you look up. And then when you're going to see all this chaos, and then you're going to see this little section of air pocket, and that's where you're going to want to come up through. That's going to be the least resistance. And like just stuff like that I learned at such a young age has just stayed with me. And, you know, like just repetitions in the ocean, paddling the boards, the surf skis, swimming, and all different crafts, and the long distance paddling. Like it's where I've done my 10,000 hours. You know, that's my, you know, I was never that good at school. I wasn't that locked into learning, but put me in the water and to compete and to try and win or to work it out, or even in a team sport, like I was locked in. That was where it's where I felt comfortable. It's where I loved and where I loved to challenge myself. And still to this day, it's still where I'm still learning. I'm still trying to work out how to improve and get better and be the best that I can be. And it's and like you said earlier, it's a never ending journey in the ocean because it's never the same. It's ever changing. No one swell is ever the same. And it's just the love of my life, the ocean and the water, and being in it is just the one thing that has kept me sane and happy and throughout my entire life.
Move fast and break shit. LSKD develops functional sportswear with a streetwear aesthetic that's on a mission to inspire you to chase the vibe through sport, fitness, and adventure. I train daily in the rep shorts and love the versatility they offer. The zipper pocket is an absolute game changer. I go from training at the gym directly to meetings, running errands, or prepping for podcasts. The LSKD tribe has become true family, and we are excited to continue to develop our community. Shop now at lskd.com and use code ALLSMITH. We chase the vibe here at ALLSMITH. Let's all become 1% better every day. That's badass, man. I like hearing the connection you have to the craft, which is incredibly special. And also, when I think about the human experience, there's certain things that can't be learned in a classroom or in a self-help book or even on a podcast. It must be felt. It must be practiced. It must be exhausted in those 10,000 plus hours that you described. And it sounds to me that you learn best through experience and through the tangible application of trying to apply the things that maybe somebody whispers in your ear of, hey man, when you're trying to get out past the break and you're going under some of these monster waves, grabbing onto the sand and then finding that little pocket of air is going to be a lot better than just duck diving underneath every single wave, not knowing what's potentially on the other side where you can then experience a setback. And so I think everybody learns a little bit differently, and it's cool to hear that not only did you learn that way and you applied it from the early age of 5, but then, in my opinion, the peak version of success is like, how do you pay it forward? How do you inspire that next generation? And it's so special that you're doing that with your daughters while simultaneously trying to continue to do it with camps in different places around the world. And also, you're still learning yourself. And the sport continues to evolve, man. The different forms of towing, foiling. I mean, you're seeing these up-and-comers like Jojo Roper, like Luca Padua, the young bucks that are full of piss and vinegar that want to chase every last wave, whether it's Jaws or Nazare or some of these places in Mexico, like Todos Santos. It's just so cool to hear how guys like you, Shane Dorian, and Kelly Slater, despite experiencing the injuries and the recovery rate like 10xing what it once was, that you're still like enrolled in the process and getting after it with these guys and helping support them in their pursuit of some of these 50 and 60-foot waves.
Yeah, and it's just like you said, like, I since summer has started over here and the waves have stopped, I started my own little thing over here called Little Nippers. And it's, so every Saturday morning, all my daughters and their friends in the neighborhood here, I've got like 20 kids, and I just go down the Sunset Beach and I put a couple of buoys in the water, and I bring down boards, and I take them through like, a basic version of run, swimming and paddling and like what they're doing with the junior guards, so I am able to, give back some of that knowledge and the way that I learnt. And then, for example, we're talking about JoJo, like this year, I couldn't surf that big swell we had in Mavericks, that big toe swell. And, but I wanted to go over and help JoJo, so I said, hey, I'm going to come over and I want to tell you, let's team up. And, JoJo got the wave of the day, right? So that was my way of like still competing against those young kids and everyone out there. I'm like, let's find the best wave. That's my goal today, is to get you the best wave and you get the best wave of the day. And so we went out and we got it. It doesn't always happen like that, you know what I mean? But it's still like, that's what drives me, and that's what's fun. And even if I couldn't surf, I wanted to be out there. I didn't want to miss that swell. I wanted to be in that energy, and I wanted to help one of my best friends out, in one of the biggest swells, of the last few years, and that's what makes me be alive, still to this day, is to be out
that
there.
Energy has to be so epic, man. I can only imagine what that feels like. How big was that wave that you towed him into?
I mean, it's so hard to say. They're so big out there once it gets to a certain size, but even the wave, when you see it, really doesn't do it justice on film. I mean, that thing was 60 foot, like a 60-foot face doubling up. And then, he pulled in and got spat out, so it was, and that day wasn't by any means easy day to find waves. It was a really raw, really west swell with this south lump from the night before. So it was awesome. It was awesome to see him come out and have that big smile on his face. And then, then we jumped in the car that afternoon and we drove down to Todos, and he went and paddled Todos the next day.
So cool, man. Like I watched that on YouTube, like, I don't know, 40 or 50 fucking times this week, knowing that I was going to have the fortunate opportunity to connect with you. And one of the videos that I crossed paths with was you describing what big wave surfing is. And I think it was on another podcast, but it was so beautifully described in the sense of, it's like running and jumping off of a 6-story building, holding your breath and having a crocodile under the water while trying to fight your way back up to the surface. And I was like, dude, that's perfect.
Yeah, it's a wild thing, and it's wild to think that the human body can endure what people endure. I mean, not just in what we do in other crazy sports, but when you're in that environment of big waves and you get to hear it and feel it and see it, and the positions and the wipeouts that you see, it's just like, wow. like how is this really possible? It's truly amazing that the human body can endure, and the human body and mind and spirit, can endure the things that you see out there in those conditions, because it's radical, really.
Yeah, it really is. And I cross paths on YouTube, man, with some of your wild wipeouts.
I've
I
had a
have
few.
no idea. I mean, dude, there was one. It's on like YouTube Shorts right before like the wave that you towed JoJo into, and it's like you're paddling hard, you pop up on the board, and you're ready to rock, and then all of a sudden you just almost nosedive, land directly on your shoulder. And I
Jaws.
think the cognition of most people is like, oh, it's water, it's not that bad. But it's like when you're falling from that high, that hard, the water's close to cement. What was that experience like, and how would you describe the wipeout scenario for people?
Yeah, that one was I know which one you're talking about. That was the Jaws contest,
Yep.
the
Yes, it
last
was.
Jaws contest we had, and me and Jojo were cruising together on the same boat, and we both had bad wipeouts that day. And but that one for me was, yeah, nearly maybe one of my worst ones I've ever had. It was the first wave of the day. It looked pretty clean, but the wind is offshore out there, and it was hard. I got hung up at the top, and like you said, it was a 50-foot face wave that I fell from the top, hit really hard. When I hit I fell on my shoulder and the side of my head. I actually got flash knocked out, because the next thing I remember is being pinned on the bottom. And it's really hard to hit the bottom of Jaws. You don't do it very often. I've only done it twice. And I was flat on the bottom on the rocks, and my leg was like shooting up, because my board is underwater with the leash. So it's called tombstoning. And usually your board is like out of the water, right? Because to pull a 10-foot board, that pressure underwater is super hard. But my board was nearly like all the way underwater, and I was pinned on the bottom, and the violence of the pressure squeezing me was something I never really felt. And I was, so I went and pulled my vest, the air canister, and it did nothing. Like I was
Mm.
still just like, it just wouldn't let me go. And it took felt like a long time, but it was probably like 3 or 4 seconds. And then you feel everything start to lighten up. And then, I finally got to the surface. But yeah, I was shook from that wave. I didn't get to surf another big wave that year, because for whatever reason, the swell never came again. And so I had to stew on that wave for about a year.
That's
And
tough.
the first time that I've really I had a year to sit on it until the next year. And I remember paddling out to Jaws the next year in the first swell of the year. And I was really doubting myself for one of the first times. You always have a little bit of trepidation and obviously anxiety sometimes, but
Yeah.
generally speaking, I'm pretty relaxed, and I'm pretty easy going with the swells these days. It's but that one took me a few months, getting back into surfing big waves, to get my confidence back. It really shook my confidence, that wave. And yeah, that was a bad one. It's like you
I
say,
really
that
have.
was a perfect example of my analogy. You're
Yeah.
sprinting, you jump off the building, you hit, and then you're underwater just getting ragdolled, and while you're
Getting
trying to
pummeled.
stay calm and hold your breath, and then get to the surface, hopefully before the next one comes over you, so you don't have a two-wave hold down.
Yeah, for sure. The Trident family taught me something really important this last year, that we are all a bundle of stories, both good, bad, and everything in between. All of their cold brews remind their customers that they are part of something bigger than themselves. I start my day with the Sweet Cream Cold Brew as I am prepping my mind and body for fitness, service, coaching, and podcasting. With various locations in San Diego, they offer over 14 nitro cold brews and a variety of specialty drinks. You can find the perfect brew and pair it with one of their treats from the Keto Bakery. You can check them out over at tridentcoffee.com and use code ALLSMITH to take your coffee experience to the next level. You mentioned the word spirit And, it sounds like, especially given the limited opportunity that year, that's tough, man. Like, to have that level of experience and then not be able to have the opportunity to redeem yourself for 365 days plus, and you're just playing and replaying that episode in your mind. What were some of the tactics that you used on the back end to kind of rekindle that confidence? Was there a lot of breath and exposure work? Was there different forms of XPT style training with dumbbells in the pool and like enhancing your CO2 tolerance? Like, what can be done kind of on the back end to potentially mimic those effects, so that way you are getting those reps and you are tangibly trying to experience different forms of discomfort? So then when you do get back into that position, later that year, or in this case, the next year, you do have that intrinsic confidence.
Yeah, so I'm always in pretty good shape. I'm always training just year round, just for life, for mental health. For me, it's something that I need to do every day. And I have a sauna ice at my house, so like I do the cold therapy, hot exposure all the time. I like riding my mountain bike. I do beach work, so I'm in shape. So for me personally, uh, it's the process of going to get back to a swell that you've got to, for me, that you've got to get more back in tune with. It's like you see the swell coming, right? And you're like, so then you start to be like, okay, like it's coming. I'm about to have to get back out there. And then it's, you get over there, you're preparing, that anxiety of like knowing that you have the scar from this last wipeout, these demons that you have to try and work through. And that's the process. Things being on the boat, going out there, how big is it going to be? What are the conditions like? And then pulling up into the boat, then seeing it's now, okay, geez, it's 40 to 50 feet. And now I've got to go out there. Do I want to go out there? Like, so it's that internal battle of, like, in my mind, I'm saying I really want to do it. In my heart, I want to do it, but in my mind, do I really want to do it? And that day, I remember paddling out and being super uncomfortable and sitting out there going, geez, man, is this what I really want to do? Like, am I forcing an issue here because it's my identity, and like I'm too scared to say that I don't want to do this anymore? So there's all these crazy thoughts, and then you get out there, and I remember that day I had a couple of waves, but I didn't wipe out, which was probably the worst thing. What I mean, wipe out, just fall, just like it doesn't have to be a bad wipeout. It could be just anything where you sort of get ragdolled and you come up and you're like, oh, that's what it feels like again, and I'm okay. But I actually made my waves and only got a few waves, and I was like, wow, I felt good, but then I was like, oh man, like I didn't wipe out. And so that anxiety moved on again until we went to Mavericks. And this was the year that Mavericks went gangbusters, and through COVID. Peter Mel got his incredible wave that year. And it was in December, and it was a giant swell. And I remember I had to go through that whole process I just mentioned. I had to go through that again at Mavericks because I was still feeling like I don't know if I can handle a wipeout, like what's going to happen. And thank God that swell, I got some good waves, and I had a really good wave where it shut down on me and I got smoked and ragdolled and came up, and I'm like, that moment it shifted. Everything shifted for me. I was like, I needed to understand that I could go through the wipeout process and be okay, and I did. And then from that moment on, I just went back to the Jamie that had been before the Jaws wipeout. So it was just a process that I had to go through until that I finally got to the point where I had that wipeout.
I like the way you described that, man. It's this unique thought process of like, when something tough happens, you do have a level of trauma, and you can't necessarily distract, deflect, or have an altered state of consciousness to work through that. You actually just, like you said, have to go through the process. And then it was almost too good to be true on your first visit because you didn't experience a wipeout that was similar to that feeling that you had that first time at Jaws. And so then experiencing that a little bit later gave you this proof of concept that like, oh, when I go through difficult things in the midst of a wipeout or tough conditions, now I believe in myself to respond to that. And I know that even in the worst of situations, that I have the tools in my toolbox, and my body, mind, and spirit are able to recalibrate, respond, and then get to the other side. And I think it's a really beautiful analogy that I think a lot of people can take with them, even if they're not big wave surfers, and they're using this tangible conversation as like a metaphorical analogy for their day-to-day life.
Yeah, I think you can use a lot of, I think, sport and relates to everyday life a lot, man. I mean, I take everything I've done in my sporting career. It just helps me get through everyday life of being a dad, a husband, a friend, whatever it may be. And, like you're going through a tough time with anything, relationships or friendships or anything, I think you can take those steps that I just went through to get myself back to surfing. I think you can take those steps to get back to whatever that may be that you're struggling with, during everyday life, so it's a beautiful thing, but you've got it is a process, and there's steps to it. And, I know for me personally, like I feel so comfortable in those conditions, and I feel comfortable because I train so hard. I've got so much experience, and I put myself in these situations all the time to be able to deal with them. And I've had to deal with them before. And so I knew that like I can handle these. I knew I could handle the wipeout, but for whatever reason, I just had to take a step back and go through it again to really reiterate that, and the mind can be a beautiful thing, it can be a scary thing, and it can be a frustrating thing, but when you can work it all out, it's there's nothing better.
Yeah, totally. Speaking of the mind, man, before we backtrack and unpack a little bit of your paddling career with your 10 Molokai wins, Brandon Lillard is one of my really good friends, and he said he wanted to share a middle finger with you on air.
Yeah,
That guy's such a legend, man.
Brandon's looked after us a few times down in Todos with JoJo, and that he's a good guy. I like Brandon.
Yeah, he's a special human, man.
Speaking about going through tough things, man, so.
Yeah, totally. We had him on the show. I think he was one of my very first guests when I first started the podcast, like almost 3 years ago now. And yeah, man, for somebody to basically be dead after a base jumping accident and respond the way he did, it's such a special story. And I keep joking that I'm going to have him come in studio and we'll chop it up again. And he just got back from Fiji. He was down surfing with those guys for about a month.
Nice.
And so I just got to lure him into studio and we'll have an epic conversation.
Yeah.
What was your paddling career like, man? Like, how did you find your way into that? Obviously, you mentioned that you had exposure at 5 years old that also unlocked this competitive instinct. But how did you find your way towards this grueling 32-mile race that just seems like a marathon on unstable surface?
Yeah. Yeah. So like I said, I've been paddling my whole life, and a friend, when you're in a surf club, you have all these people, and our coach at the time had been over to do the first Molokai, which was in 1997. And he came back and was like, oh man, there's this race, and, super cool, this and that. And so a bunch of the guys in the club were like, we should go do that one year. And so a couple of years later in 1999, me and one of my best friends at the time were like, hey, let's go and do a team. Let's go check it out. Let's go to Hawaii, have a holiday. And that's basically how it started. We're like, let's go over. So we did. And we went over, we won the team's race. Me and my friend Leon Hay at the time. Conditions were horrible, super flat, like not the Molokai conditions that you hear of, like raging downwind conditions. It was like really hot and really flat. And then that sort of sparked my interest in that race. And it took a few years. I did a team again, and I traveled the world in between it. And one of my best friends actually won the race in 2001 while I was there. I got to watch him win that race, and I was like, "Oh, okay, I'm gonna go back and try and win this race and beat him." And so we went back. We all trained together, had boards made, and in 2002 I came back, and it was the first year that I had put like a lot of effort into paddling a longer distance, because our races in Australia are all like 3, 4, 5 minute sprint races in and out of the surf. This is a 32 mile long distance paddle on a board that's 18 foot long, completely different style of paddling, and I was lucky enough to go. I won that year, and it just started a straight up addiction, like a gnarly, like it consumed my life. And I just, once I won the one, there was a guy called Sean Monahan who had won two, and I was like, oh man, I want to win two. And I went back and won the next year and won two, and then I was like, well, I want to be the first one to win three, and it just kept snowballing, and at that time too, like, funnily enough, this is in the early 2000s, right? So 2002, 2003, 2004, I'm at number 3. And I'm at this stage, Quicksilver's picked me up to sponsor me and help me out. And Kelly's with Quicksilver, and Kelly's on his run of world titles, right? And at that stage, he's at, I don't know, 6 or 7, but he's not winning as much at that time. And I'm like, oh man, I'm gonna catch Kelly for world titles. Even though like paddling is such a minute sport, but that was just a way for me to have this goal, So like I won 4 and I won 5, and he hadn't won a couple at that stage. And so like I'm getting to this point where I'm getting the 6 or 7, 8 Molokai titles, and Kelly's at 9, 10. And so I just had this little internal battle with myself trying to catch Kelly, you know what I mean? And it just morphed into what it did, man. And it consumed my life. It was able to meet all these awesome humans and big wave surfers too in Hawaii. It really helped me get to Hawaii in the winter times, also to come and start surfing during the winters, and to get to me to where I am now, to living in Hawaii. It really was this awesome decade of my life that I just was so in tune and focused to win that race that nothing else mattered. I would, basically give 4 to 5 months out of every year for 10 years to train and dedicate my life to win that race.
10 titles, man. A decade worth of titles in a 32-mile race. That's something definitely that you should hold your head very high about. What I'm curious in relation to that is it's easy to romanticize like memories when looking back and being like, man, that was 10 years that were just like epic. But at the same time, when you look at champions, there's a level of sacrifice, there's a level of obsession and dedication that needs to go into that, where the general public or maybe family or friends, they don't get it. They don't understand. They don't understand why you need to put in the reps and the miles and the various training cycles. Did you experience that at all, where it was almost like you wanted it so bad because of your description of it being an addiction that it was almost a little bit of a lonely battle at times, where you felt misunderstood to continually put in this training volume, even though after you complete that 6 or 7 times, you're kind of like, man, I've checked that box, but you kept going. Like, what was that experience like for you?
Yeah, I think you said the 3 words awesome, like obsession, dedication, and the commitment. It's those 3 words in a nutshell. It started off for me like, it was a holiday, and we would go, and those first few years, like I wasn't very dedicated. Like we would come over, we're going out to Haleiwa Joe's and drinking a few nights a week, having a good time. And then we're training along the way and we do the race, you know, like it wasn't really, it was fun, man. It was a fun way to have a holiday and go and have a great time with your friends and do a race. And, you know, and then it became, for me, like I saw a way that, you know, I was able to, you know, Quicksilver offered me a contract. I was working as a full-time lifeguard at the time in 2005. So I'd won like 3 at the time, I think. And, yeah, Quicksilver, they offered me 25 grand a year. It's like $500 a week. I'm making more lifeguarding, right? But I just was like, I think that there's an opportunity here for me to make something out of this. I was living with my parents at the time. I talked to them. I said, hey, like, this might sound crazy, but I want to quit my job and I just want to dedicate like this waterman style lifestyle to Quicksilver and to see where I can go, and maybe I can get a bigger contract. Maybe I can do all this other stuff, you know, and, you know, at that point, you know, we were still, like I said, you know, drinking in Australia was it's a bit of a binge culture. It's not really like when I look back at it now, it's not really it's a pretty shitty way to our culture of the way we treat alcohol and that stuff over there. And, you know, we would paddle on the weekend and, you know, like after we do our big paddle, we'd go into the pub and, you know, have some fun. And I just was like, I'm done with this shit, man. I'm like, I'm not doing this anymore. And I'm committing that whole 4 months. All I'm doing is eating, sleeping, training. I didn't even surf. I was living at Currumbin Point. The surf would be rifling, pumping waves, and I'd be waking up and I'd be going swimming in the pool. I'd swim 6 kilometers. I'd come back. I'd eat. I'd rest. I'd go train. I'd train 2 to 3 times a day, 5 days a week with a long paddle on the weekend with Sunday off. And I would do that every single day. And no one could shift my focus. No one could derail me. The people that I'd sometimes even trained with, they continued on their path. And they were trying to get me to come out and drink and stuff. And I was just like, no, like, I'm not doing it. Like no one, like I was so mentally strong, like no one could budge me. And that's what it took. You know,
That's really cool.
I just was like, I just knew that if I trained every day, did everything right, when I turned up to that race, that the biggest thing for me was like, I just wanted to prepare the best I could. And if I didn't win, it didn't matter. If someone was better than me, that's fine. I always was like, if I can look myself in the mirror after that race and say, Jamie, you did everything possible to win that race, but you just weren't good enough on the day, or you had it all, then I was like, I'm okay with it. But if I looked at myself and was like, hey, you quit, you didn't do the right things, you got beat because of that, I wouldn't be able to live with myself, you know? So
Peptides. There's been a lot of buzz about peptides and what they can do for the body, skin, muscles, and health. What exactly are they? And do they live up to the hype? Your body makes peptides. They are strings of amino acids, which are the building blocks of proteins. Peptide therapy involves using prescription-based peptides to help treat and manage a variety of health conditions to maximize performance. Peptides consist of 2 to 50 amino acids and are made naturally in the body to act as important signaling molecules for many physiological and cellular functions. There are over 7,000 known functions of peptides in the body, and adequate levels in the body are imperative for performing at optimal levels. Discover a transformative journey to optimal well-being with Livv Peptides. Livv Peptides offer a natural and effective approach to health support. Embrace the difference. Choose Livv for a path to vitality that prioritizes quality, innovation, and your unique wellness goals. My personal favorite is BPC 157 with thymosin beta for optimizing gut health, tissue regeneration, and healing. Head over to livvnatural.com and use code ALLSMITH for 20% off peptides. That's LIVVNATURAL.com with discount code ALLSMITH for 20% off peptides.
No regrets, man. It sounds like you squeezed every ounce of juice out of your orange at that time. Was there a defining moment for you in relation to the drinking culture that you were exposed to and a part of for a very long time, where you know, had a tough decision, or, lost somebody you loved? Or was there a rock bottom for you that you were just like, fuck this, I'm not drinking like this anymore. Like, I want to focus solely on this goal. And if I can get a mediocre contract from Quicksilver, I can absolutely enhance that, and I can make a life out of this based on my dedication, my focus. Because it almost sounds like you were observing the landscape and you were almost gap filling, like, okay, the best in the world aren't doing these things. So if I do these things, I can become the best in the world.
Yeah, and I think that's what I did in that certain amount of time, and it took me a long time. Like, I haven't drank now for right around nearly 2 years to like this month. Actually, I haven't touched a drop of alcohol for 2 years, but it took me a long time. Like, I could always go. I was always mentally strong enough to go 3 months without drinking, 4 months, like 6 months, whatever it needed to be to get me to where I needed to be. But then I could go the other way. I could go and go crazy like the other way. That's just my personality. I have that all in or all out personality, which is really good for like Molokai and focusing that, but really bad if you go the other direction as well. So it took me a long time to even the last, after Molokai winning and with the big wave stuff, you would go and catch crazy waves, dude, and then you'd be so pumped up on adrenaline, like you'd be at the pub after with the boys drinking, going crazy, right? And it just was it's a vicious cycle of just like adrenaline overload and dopamine, and then depression afterwards, because now you feel like shit, and then all the weight, what you did in the surface dropped off. And so it took me a long time to find this balance of where I needed to be for my mental stability and to be the best father and best husband I could be. But it just, I've just finally, I'm 47, 2 years, and the last decade, I haven't like drank and partied a lot. There's been moments in time, but it wasn't a consistent thing. It was always like a moment and then off for a while and then a moment. But now it's just like, it just doesn't serve its purpose anymore. It just doesn't serve me well anymore. I don't like it. And, I just want to make the most of what I've got left. I mean? I'm 47. I still feel like I've got, as long as my mind, my ability, the desire, all that stuff for me is still 100% like there. Like the way I feel and my health is probably the best it's ever been at 47. Now the body and just gravity and age, that just, you can't beat that. That's Father Time. And so, but as long as my mind and I'm not injured, and like I see myself continuing to do what I do for a long time, it's just, does the body allow me to do it? But my mind and my spirit and how I feel and the way I treat my body, like with the food I eat and everything like that, is the best it's ever been at 47. So
that's cool, man. You're redefining age.
But I just, it's just anything that doesn't serve its purpose to better me every day is being chucked out of my life.
Yeah, I like the way you describe it, especially with alcohol being such a big part of surf culture and just connection and laughter, and when used appropriately can be a great moment like you described, and then when abused can be a tremendous crutch. And I've heard you speak about it before. There was a moment where you said you were in bed cuddling, kind of nurturing your daughter and spending time with her, and then there was a moment where you were like, I gotta go. And you didn't necessarily say anything, but you just stepped out and went to the pub. And what was that experience like? And how did you kind of overcome that level in the future of like shame? And how do I become a better man and father and husband?
Yeah, it's, I felt like I was nearly living two lives sometimes. I had this Jamie that would, be drinking and partying and just sort of like detach himself from the real world, the rest of the world. Then there was Jamie, the athlete father, awesome husband, awesome dad, and then it was like the shitty dad, the shitty husband, the like not very good athlete. Like when you look at what you're doing, right? And yeah, that moment, when I look back at that moment, it makes me feel physically ill. That to think that I could even like, because I sleep with my daughter most nights, and it's the most enjoyable thing that I do in my life is wake up with my daughter and go to bed, and we, have that moment of just me and her talking, and to think that I would just get up after that and then go drink, or it blows my mind, dude. Like it makes me just go like, who was that person? Like, where did that come from? Like, and so for me, those moments where I look back and I'm just like, man, that's just like really disgusting, But unpacking it, instead of just sort of like just thinking like that, you got to turn it into a positive, right? Unpack it. Why was I like that? Why was I making those decisions? And now how do we work through it? How do I become a better person and all that stuff? So it's like yeah, it's ongoing, for me it's an ongoing thing. I'm working at it every day. I just to be a better person, and like I said, but it's certain personalities, some I got friends that can just like go out and have 2-3 drinks and have a great time, go home and whatever, and that just wasn't how I was raised. Just wasn't how, like my father was like that. I think my grandfather was like that. A lot of my friends were like that. It was just normal when I grew up in Australia. And when I unpack that and look back at it, the way that I was brought up like that, I didn't really have a chance, until I was able to start to work through it. I've done lots of a lot of it was doing ayahuasca. I did a lot of ayahuasca ceremonies. I spent 3 weeks up in Peru by myself at one stage, really trying to like just learn more about myself and unpack what it was that made me tick and understand my mind. And because it was like I understood my mind was so strong, and like in the ways that I've been so successful, it's helped me so much. But when it come to the other things and going that spiraling in the other directions, I was so headstrong, like it was a detriment, so I had to really like work out like what the hell was going on, and no one could do it but myself. I had to detach from life and everyone and try and work out what was going on, so it's been quite a journey. It's been quite an interesting journey. It's been fun, a lot of tears and a lot of like lows along the way, but I feel like I'm in a place where I've found this happy medium of life and where I should be. I can still tap into that Jamie that needs to be tapped into when it needs to be, but when that devil on the other shoulder starts going the other direction, I've worked ways out to level that out where I don't go there anymore.
That's an incredible description, man. I wanna understand the ayahuasca experience a little bit with you. What took place that allowed you to deconstruct your ego to the point where, hey, I need to seek guidance. I need to better understand myself. I need to find, whether it's some form of therapy or a shaman that can help me create a better understanding as to maybe some of the positive, negative, and everything in between that's kind of floating in your headspace. Because it's difficult when on one end, you're this incredible high performer that's one of the best in the world as a waterman and doing the craft. But then you noticed this other side of yourself. And sometimes that's difficult. It's easy to like push that away and be like, hey, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I need these things in order to perform at this level. And it's kind of like that Dennis Rodman approach that we saw in The Last Dance with Michael Jordan. How did you kind of come to that resolution and then surrender to the experience of like, okay, if I want to have sustainability in this craft, I need to better understand this and better manage that little tap on the shoulder that you talked about before.
Look, I think there's your number one. There are rock bottom moments, right? And there's your family, and there's sometimes there's ultimatums, right? You get to a point where it's like, hey, if this doesn't stop, then we're out of here. Like, you know what I mean? Like there's those moments, with your family, and not just your wife, like friends, and friends along the way that you may have like pissed off or damaged those friendships, or your close family, and then you have to really check your ego and really look yourself in the mirror and be like, hey, like, is this the person I want to be? Like this path I'm going down, like, is this it? Is this who you want Jamie Mitchell to be? Like, and it's a tough question you got to ask, and then it's like, okay, well, if it's not, then how are we gonna fix this? And my wife is just an amazing woman. She's very spiritual, and she does a lot of research on a lot of things, and we've known people that have done plant medicine before, and we just thought that this would be a really a cool way for me to start to digest, go deeper, and not just with the alcohol and stuff, but just deeper as a person, and you unpack your childhood and all sorts of different stuff, and just understand yourself more, and self-love and all that stuff. And so it's at the time I was going in to get a shoulder surgery as well, so there was a perfect timing for me to like just go and regroup and sort of just learn more about myself. And the first time I did it actually was down at Livv in Costa Rica. Went down there for like 2 weeks and did it down there, and then have continued on the journey. I did one about 6 months ago as my last one. The last few years I haven't done it as much, but every now and then I'll get the opportunity to dive back in and do it. And it's a real interesting experience, man. Like it's nothing I can sit here and try and explain it, but you would think I'm crazy. People think you're crazy when you talk about ayahuasca. It's a whole nother level of where you go in your mind and the things that you see and you're able to unpack. It's I would say it's just a real journey.
I like that, man.
Yeah.
Something that comes to mind here is there's something to the human experience that can't be described with words, but must be felt. And I find like a common thread amongst you high-performing watermen that you just have this innate depth to you and this explorative sense of wanting to dabble in lots of different arenas of life to enhance your craft. And what I mean by that is, Laird, right off the bat, has been somebody that's been an innovator within the space. He realized things about toe-in surfing and just trying to challenge societal norms. But then he also understood, as he got older with his hip injury, that he couldn't train the same way he always did. And so the exposure and the unique buoyancy of training in the water with dumbbells gives you this meditative, euphoric experience. And then when you tie that into this tribal culture of sharing that with your friends and making elements of it competitive, and then you tie that into the contrast therapy of sauna and ice and connection with nature, and then you add in CO2 tolerance and breath work. Shane's done the same thing. Kelly Slater's done the same thing. You're doing it. Luca's doing it. JoJo's doing it. And that's just the tip of the iceberg with some of the high performers that I've been fortunate to cross paths with. What is it about this tribal culture within the waterman space of big wave surfing, being on the WSL, and towing people into waves, and this depth of connection with the human experience and nature that pulls out the willingness to have these euphoric experiences that, I don't know if I'm describing it perfectly, but I think you're going to be able to gather what I mean.
Yeah, I mean, I think I think that we crave connection. I think that, what Laird and those, I mean, look, Laird and Dave Kalama, two of my all-time favorite, athletes. That they're, I was lucky enough to, um, go out to with Laird and Dave and Derek Donor my first time towing George. Through my more personal connection with Dave. Me and Dave were really close and trained together for Molokai and stuff. And I used to stay at Dave's house for a few months in the summer, and watching those movies growing up and watching them, the Strap Crew and what they created, and Rush Randall and all those innovators from Maui, they were always at the forefront of, like when foiling. I mean, they were foiling well before this new craze of foiling, so they've always been at the forefront. And, I think that what they created was this brotherhood, of like, number one, of like just pure unadulterated fun. They're doing what they love. They're with their best friends. But now what they're doing is death defying and dangerous, right? So now you've got to, you can't just go out there and not be training and not be healthy, right? So now you've got to work out ways of like, how are we going to train to survive these things, So they were just at the forefront. They've always been at the forefront of everything, especially Laird, like, even if you look at his love for coffee, and what he's done with his Laird superfood and everything like that, he's just always been a guy that's been obviously a really deep thinker, and an innovator, and he hasn't been scared to go and do it. He's so yeah, I think it's that brotherhood. There's nothing better than being in the ocean in those conditions and towing your buddy into your best wave of his life, or seeing the other buddies get the best wave of your life. Like when that day ends and you're unpacking everything and whatever you're doing afterwards, and there's no feeling you can describe that, like what you all feel together. I mean, you're just looking at each other and you're like, you nod your head and you're like, that was fucking awesome. Like, what I mean? It was like, that was the best day ever.
Free is the way to be. Life beats us up a bit and causes some bumps and bruises, but that doesn't mean we have to stay on the sidelines. This is why we've partnered with Kinyan Labs. Get back to doing what you love with this incredible portable device designed to get you back in the game. Kinyan is on a mission to move people from pain to possible with their top-rated red light therapy and laser solution, which tackles inflammation along with muscle and joint pain quickly and effectively. What I love is that it's portable and rechargeable, making it easy to actually incorporate into my everyday life consistently. It's small and lightweight, so you can throw it in your gym bag or work bag, or even an overnighter. Kinyan's lasers and LED combo make this cutting-edge device extremely versatile for use with general aches and pains, as well as chronic back pain, arthritis, post-surgery recovery, endometriosis, and more. This has been an amazing tool keeping my elbows and knees pain-free for pressing, pulling, and squatting in the gym. Great tools like the Move Plus give me the freedom and flexibility to continue living life on my terms without limitations. There are a lot of reasons why over 15,000 people are using this device and rating it 4.7 stars and above. Head on over to kinyan.io and use code ALLSMITH at checkout to begin your pain-free journey. Yeah, you guys are definitely enrolled in doing the thing, and I've crossed paths with some pretty high performers, and something that seems to also float to the surface is just like, you could be the richest person in the world. You could have the utmost success. You could have X, Y, and Z in your bank account, drive whatever car, whatever society says is that version of success. It doesn't get much better than doing cool shit with some of your best friends and sharing in some laughs.
It's the best thing ever. It's your money. I mean, look, man, I know a lot of people with money, and I guarantee they're not having the fun that we're having. You know what I mean? Like it's, you can't you can't buy that. You can't buy that experience or those moments in life that we get, or someone that guys that are going spearfishing together and slaying 100-pound onos in the blue water, or whatever it is, the motocross guys, they're going out and pushing the limits of doing triple backflips, and the skateboarders, like anything that just gives you that bond with your brothers or sisters, especially when it's on the edge of life and death. There's something definitely that brings you even closer together when you're in that realm. It's special, man. It's what for me now, being a little bit older, and obviously being honest with yourself, coming towards the end of like more of those big wave things. Like for me, those moments are what I'm looking for. Like I'm looking for that mine and JoJo moment of Mavericks last year. I'm looking at being out there with Allo and Luca and seeing those guys perform, and watching them grow and get better and get the ways of their lives. And my other friends from halfway across the world that might fly over, like being able to helping them with a jet ski, or maybe getting them the way with their life, or whatever it may be. Like I'm looking for those moments. That's what I love. That's what makes me feel alive, feel whole. And I'll continue looking for those moments. And that, and those moments now, it's moved over into helping people train, or having people over, in my sauna, in my ice bath, and helping them see what it's like, and what it feels like to live this type of life, and taking people into the pool and showing them the underwater training. Like it's just, it just evolves and keeps moving. It doesn't necessarily need to be death defying, like in the ocean, in big waves or whatever it may be, but creating that community to me and is so important. And it's the way I want to see out the rest of my life. I want to, when I look at my future, I see creating these camps and foil camps and whatever it may be, health and wellness retreats, and just have people come together, share my experiences and other people's, and just share the wealth of knowledge that I have, and have a good time, and have people be healthy. Like that's what I want to do. That's what makes me happy. And yeah,
it's an honorable pursuit, man. And within some of these incredible experiences, unfortunately, especially with what we described previously with the alcohol culture and the travel and just the danger associated with some of these extreme sports, comes loss. There's people that have passed away and moved on to their next life. Kai is one of the ones that comes to mind, and I know you've crossed paths with him a little bit. With it being Men's Mental Health Awareness Month here in June, and we look at the likes of someone like a Robin Williams, Avicii, Taylor Hawkins, and some of the special people that are, rock star performers, which probably relates very much mentally to this unique, extreme euphoria and dopamine and adrenaline that you described in your sport. What has been your experience with loss of some of your close friends, and what advice would you want to share with people around this mental health initiative?
I think it's just, we have to be okay with communicating as men. I think that it needs to be okay to ask for help, to reach out for help. I actually just found a friend. You should check him out. His name's Tommy Herschel, and his Instagram handle feed is Find Your Feet. So he goes around schools and is trying to get out to young kids, especially boys, that it's okay to talk to your friends about stuff that's going on in your life, and how important it is that we've been so like grown up as to just guys can just like you'll be all right, mate. We all deal with this crap. Just move on and just get, we'll be okay. We got to shift ourselves from that type of mentality to like, no, it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to cry. It's okay to be vulnerable, and, the way I use it is in the sauna and the ice. And I have like my sauna is like the truth serum box, dude. I've got friends that come over and we just wrap it out, man. We're about life, relationships, anything that's going on. And it's amazing that when you jump into that sauna, the stuff that spews out of our mouths without even trying, And so like for me, like the sauna is is the way to go. And I'll invite people, like if I see someone having a hard time or I can sense something's going on, I'll be like, hey man, let's sauna ice later. Jump in. Usually we get to chat about what's going on, and vice versa, I got some stuff going on at the moment with like a lot of stuff and I was wigging out yesterday. So I called my friend over and said, hey, you want to sauna ice? And luckily he was like, yeah, let's go over. And so I was able to, like, without, I guess, asking for help, like, hey, can you come over? I need to talk. I was like, hey, let's come sauna ice. Then we get in there and I start to chat, So like, that's a way that I'm able to, I guess, maybe help my friends and help myself as well, But I just think as men, we've just got to lighten up on ourselves. We've got to make it okay to ask for help and be vulnerable and reach out to people and reach out to your friends before it's too late,
Yeah, man, that's so well said. I actually have a sauna and ice at my house too. And when you're in San Diego, man, I got to have you over. We'll rip. We'll have some good, I call them sauna chats. And then I also put a little fire pit at the house. And so sometimes people that are not super into the hot and cold, it's nice to have some fireside chats and just kind of connect with something about the fire, man. When you look at it, it kind of evokes this level of granting us the permission to be more vulnerable. Yeah. And I also think it's cool because like it doesn't feel totally permissive yet for the high performing testosterone driven male to be like, I need help. You almost feel like you're being judged. You almost feel like the world is going to like label you as a little bitch, not being able to manage your emotions or things like that. And I don't know. I don't agree with those things. I think it's okay to ask for help. I think it's okay to have those lower moments. And I think if you have the willingness to do that, it actually makes like your masculinity and your level of strength and drive that much better because you're also willing to acknowledge the other as opposed to just burying it down and just saying, yeah, I'm fine. Because eventually that manifests, right? There's that famous book, The Body Keeps the Score. And, you might develop low back pain, hip pain, or randomized pains that then negatively impact the craft or the experience that you're having. And so I think being able to have that release valve, and sometimes it's just word vomit where you just need to like get it out. And then other times it's like, tangible items that you need to kind of deconstruct and navigate. And you're totally right. Something about the heat and feeling like the safety within that heat box really creates a special connection with the other people that are sharing that experience with you.
It's like the confession box, right, at a church or something.
Yeah, yeah, it's very well said, man.
And again, it's for me, like, say, Jamie, you got to go paddle down the coast like for 2 hours, no problem. Like, tell me to like go talk to my wife about something that I don't want to talk about. Like, it's like the hardest thing in the world, sometimes, or, trying to, like you're talking about, like get it out or ask for help. It's like, it's so hard still, like, and I feel like I've been working pretty hard at all this stuff for the last 5 to 10 years, but even still I'll find myself being like, I gotta say something, but I don't want to. It's so scary and it's so hard. And then you do it and you realize how good it feels and how hard it really wasn't, but it's challenging yourself, it's still challenging yourself to get over that hump of, being able to do that, type of stuff. But
It goes back to the
It's just
reps, like what you kind of described
working progress.
after that not injury, but after that wipeout. It's like it's tough to re-experience it, and almost talking about it, you experience some of these things again. And I think when you have the willingness to do so, it not only gives you the ability to almost like callous it and move on as a stronger, upgraded, better version of yourself, but holding on is almost significantly harder than letting go. I mean, think about like tangibly holding on to a rope. Like eventually letting go allows you to be a little bit lighter and freer in the next evolution of your life. But holding on to a rope and then watching it just like drag out of your hands while your hands start to bleed and whatnot is almost more painful. And I think
Yeah.
what you're describing is something that I'd love to popularize, especially within the male community of like, hey, talk about it. You're not weak. It's not going to be weaponized against you. It's actually a tool to make the rest of your life the best of your life.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that, once, if, as an individual, if you're able to help someone, potentially, unlock that, then they're able to help someone, here's this like, domino effect, right? Of like males helping males, and eventually like, instead of it, just it's a snowball effect, but it's tough, man. I get it. I get it. I get it. The world is a weird place these days, and there's a lot going on. And but yeah, it definitely, it's okay to ask for help. That's what I would say. Like, if you've got friends, they're there for a reason, and if they're not, well, then they're not your real friends. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, but I'm pretty guaranteed that if you reach out for help to someone that you call a really close friend, they're going to be there for you, and they're not going to judge you, or, their job is to listen, listen to you and just hear you out. And like you said, it's like, sometimes it's just, you've just got to say it out loud to hear it. And it's just like, oh, that feels better. Like, it doesn't necessarily need to even really be anything. It could just be, you could be pissed off with a coworker that you've been stewing on for 6 weeks, and that's making you angry, and then you're just being short with your kids, and you're fighting with your wife, like, all that stuff is just from something that's at work, and you might need to just vomit it out, and then you're like, okay, I feel better about that. Like, so many layers.
Yeah. No, that's very well said, man. I think that's a cool, crucial part of our conversation today that I think people will get a lot of value out of. I want to jump into your training a little bit along with your recovery. You're navigating the broken foot right now. What are some of the modalities that you kind of tinker with? Have you done the stem cell thing that Shane's done down in Mexico? Are you a PRP fan? What are some of the modalities that you're using to recover? And then how does that impact your training right now?
Yeah, I have used PRP before. The stem cells is something I would absolutely love to do at some stage. Yeah, I looked at Shane when he went down there, and I was super jealous. So yeah, I would, anyone out there that wants to hook me up, let me know, because I'm into it. But
Totally. I might know a guy.
the sauna ice is just a daily thing. That's just, I think, body, mind, soul, spirit is just, that's just the number one thing I think you can
Real
do for
quickly
yourself.
to bookmark you on the sauna ice, do you have a specific protocol that you really like that's kind of more in your consistent repertoire that you would recommend for people?
Not particularly. I'm one to like to change it up a little bit. Like, I used to do a lot of just I just jump in for 20-25 minutes in the sauna, 3 minutes ice, and I do that twice and finish with the ice. And then I was doing it a lot once the kids were asleep, and then I'd come back and be shivering in bed. So, and then, so if I'm doing it earlier in the day, sometimes I'll finish with the cold, because obviously there's a lot of the benefits, right, from warming your body back up naturally from that cold. And then, if there's sometimes you've done a hard workout, you should do the sauna straight away, but not necessarily the ice. So I guess that, like, there's so much information out there. And, but with everything I've done in my life and just with training, I just go off how I feel. I tell people, I go, hey, don't necessarily need to listen to one person and just take what they say. Just go with what feels good. You know what I mean? Go with what feels right. And right now at the moment, I've been just doing one at a time, just one of goes, like sauna ice. Sometimes if I've got time, I'll just jump in and do a slow cook from literally jumping in, turning it on. So it can be like 45 minutes until it gets to 190. And at that stage, I'm like tapped out. Or other times I just jump in for 20 minutes when it's already at 190, you know. So it just changes. It varies. And I play around with it. Sometimes I don't feel like shivering, so I'll, do the sauna ice and finish off with the sauna, so I'm not quite as cold. It changes day to day, really, for me.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. And the other thing that I also really love is kind of this intuitive approach of, I don't necessarily try to coach people on time per se in the cold. Sometimes I challenge them to try to take like 10 relaxed breaths with an elongated exhale, and trying their best to surrender to the experience, knowing that it is unique exposure to a form of adrenaline and anxiety. And it's so cool to see the euphoria on the other side of the cold. And the sauna, like you said, like, man, it grinds my gears right at the end of those like last 5 to 15 minutes, depending on how hot and how long you stay in there. But it's such a phenomenal tool that it just makes me so happy that so many people are now learning about this. They're partaking, they're experiencing it, and then they're sharing it with others.
Yeah, I mean, I did a 2 minute jump in the ice before the podcast, because hence the sweater in Hawaii in the summer. It's
Yeah,
like,
right.
because I know that for me, it just wakes me up. I'm more coherent. I'm more on. And, I don't do that every morning, but there's like when I've got to do something like that, I've got to be switched on. I'll usually just jump in and have a quick, like 2 minute hit to just fire myself up, and then, tonight I'll jump in and I'll do my normal, probably like sauna ice, around 5 o'clock. And it's just so good. And look, there's so much information and there's so many good experts, so-called experts, and I think that people get a little bit like um, disheartened with like, you've got to do, all these people saying you got to do this and that and making it seem so gnarly and that. It's just like, hey guys, like just start, just dip your toes in the water. I mean, took my wife a year to get to 3 minutes in our ice bath, and she didn't want nothing to do with it, because I've got mine at like 35, 36, 37. It's pretty cold. I got to
Yeah, that's chilly.
hammer the ice chunks out of it every morning, but same thing with her. I had to let her do it at her own time. And I said, honey, just 30 seconds, just aim for 30. I said, once you get to a minute, it actually gets easier. You level out, the cold becomes, it becomes more manageable. And then now she can jump in and do it for 3 minutes, and that was just a little bit at a time, and that's what I would say. Anyone listening, like, don't necessarily listen to everyone about how long they've got to go for and this macho thing of like, I'm in the ice for 10 minutes and
Mm-hmm.
all that. Just do it till it feels good, and work yourself up to it. And if you can only ever get to 90 seconds, well, 90 seconds is better than nothing, and 10
Yeah,
minutes
I
in the
like that
sauna is
approach a
better
lot.
than
It's
nothing.
just the removal of the ego and its sheer
Yeah.
just exposure to the experience. And on the other side of that, you're going to learn about yourself. You're going to feel a little bit better. And I don't always necessarily love grasping onto the science. I like where the science kind of meets the human spirit. And then you intuitively kind of do a self check-in or an elaboration of self from feet up to your head, kind of checking in like, okay, like I feel a little lighter. My breath's a little better. My cognition's a little better. I've got these feel good feelings that are going to cater to the rest of my evening or to my day. I like that you described it that way, and I think that's a great takeaway for people. What's next for Jamie Mitchell? After we get that foot healthy, what's kind of on the docket for the remainder of 2024?
You just getting really healthy, really getting ready for winter. Me and the family are going to head down to Costa Rica again, I think in August. We're going to spend a few months down there before the winter. My kids are going to enroll in a school while we're down there. My wife's really wanted them to like immerse into a Spanish speaking, culture for a while. So we're going to do that. I'm really going to dive into, doing some foiling camps down there. The foil boarding in Costa Rica is amazing. And,
That's sick.
yeah, and just work with some of the locals there that do the breath hold stuff and anything that's in my wheelhouse that, I can, help people obviously earn some money along the way. And, the big goal, like I said earlier, of our family is we want to get some property, eventually buy some property down there and set something up down there. So, grind away, work hard, be a good dad with my kids and be a good husband to the wife. And, just work hard towards the goals that we're setting for ourselves as a family. And obviously, health is wealth, man. If you can't do what you love, then everything sort of spirals, So, I've been dealing with a bit of a back thing all throughout last year as well, which I just had PRP injected into from my good friend Brad Thomas at Beach City Orthopedics in Manhattan Beach. So that's helped a lot. And so I'm just looking after myself, man, just self-care, being aware, and yes, and just get ready for a winter. And hopefully I get to hang with my boy Jojo and Luca and the young kids and keep young and get back out there and get some waves again,
I love that, man. The tribe bringing the vibe, man. You guys got a cool little collection. I look forward to seeing all your surf line videos of you guys kind of chasing after the big swells. And this is a dope conversation, man. I appreciate you allowing me into your world and sharing some of the behind the scenes of the peaks and valleys of your experience and definitely touching on that mental health component that I think is a really big one that should be popularized by more people. So thank you for today, man.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. Thanks for the platform. And, all I can say is, the strongest thing that I've ever had to do is to admit your flaws, right? Is to admit that you have problems and vices and actually even talking about it, like before I would not want anyone to know about it, but, your story is your story, and, your past is your past and you can't run away from that. You've got to meet it head on. And if I can be open and honest and share my story, and if that helps just one person along the way, then it's been worth it, So, thanks for having me on, and it's been a fun conversation.
That was cool, man. Ladies and gentlemen, Jamie Mitchell, thanks for coming on today, man. I look forward to following your journey. And for those of you watching on YouTube or listening on our other platforms, please rate, review, subscribe, and as always, stay on the hunt for who you've not yet become. Until next time, guys.